What is up, everybody? Solomon here. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic day. We've got tons of information as normal to get into today. We have got Brian Brooks, who is the former head of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or he was essentially the Comptroller of the Currency in the United States, joining the board of the HBAR Foundation. We have some Ripple, really interesting Ripple interview, essentially 20 plus central banks working with Ripple. I'm just going to kick it right off, though. First and foremost, we've got Riz at Riz XRP putting out a tweet. XRP surpassing 4.6 million total wallet addresses, which is obviously a major milestone. So it's pretty amazing to see numbers like that. Moving forward, I stumbled across this today, so always be cognizant, like some of these articles. So this is from Bitcoinist, and then there's some Cointelegraph stuff at the end of this. But Ripple is in dialogue with over 20 central banks on central bank digital currencies. And this has been disclosed by Ripple Labs Managing Director and Senior Vice President of APAC and MENA, who is Brooks Entwistle. Still bullish on Asia, sees the region leading crypto regulations for the rest of the world. I'm going to play about 45 or 50 seconds of this because I think it's fairly interesting.
And CBDCs, we do believe, are one of the most important and certainly strongest case for utility going around. And one of the things that's important to note, and you saw this on some of the panels that you led and in the discussion around Davos, no two situations, no two central banks, no two countries are the same. This is there are 200 countries out there plus. There are a lot of central banks and they have different needs and they're at different parts of this journey. So our view is, where can we come in that conversation, be a solutions provider and help them along that journey? There are certain countries that are far down the road on the digital yuan, China, others. But there are many emerging countries that are maybe smaller, that may have fewer resources, that may have different issues they're solving for, where Ripple and others like us can come in and be part of that dialogue. And so we're in dialogue with, not 10, not 20, but a bunch more, central banks around the world on these discussions. We've announced projects with Bhutan, with Palau, and others to come. And I think that just shows you that this really resonates. Now, one size does not fit all, but we need to be in this as this develops, because you're right about the big point here is there is no question that digital currencies are going to be a part of the landscape going forward.
There you guys have it. I mean, not 10, not 20, but multitudes more central banks working with Ripple. As we know, obviously, I think there's like well over 150 central banks globally. But that's an unbelievable achievement, especially since, looking at kind of the inception of Ripple as just a payment startup, I don't think it's by mistake that they've gotten through the door with some of these legacy players. So that's always kind of interesting to speculate on. One of those banks, now not directly tied with Ripple, I do know Bank of Canada has mentioned some Ripple initiatives or Ripple aspects in the past through papers and stuff like that. But Bank of Canada exploring a central bank digital currency used for offline payments. Now this just came out, so Bank of Canada releasing a research note. This is the entire research note. So central bank digital currency for offline payments. Some of the key messages within the Bank of Canada. An offline central bank digital currency is a digital complement to banknotes. The design of the offline central bank digital currency depends on the duration of the offline period. So they're talking about, settlement aspects, which you'll see in a second here. Regardless of the length of the offline period, an offline CBDC must be spent or transferred using a digital device. For example, a smartphone with a custom application. An offline CBDC offers users benefits such as enhanced resilience and better accessibility features. Could also preserve the privacy typically associated with offline payments. To minimize the risk or theft or loss. This is where I find it interesting, because we talk about the convergence of multiple different technologies over the next decade, one of which being digital identity. They're talking about potentially user-specific personal PIN numbers, which is what we already use, obviously, or biometric authentication stored on the device itself. A balance must be struck between compliance, security requirements, and user needs. Now, when you get into settlement aspects within here, intermittent offline CBDC system could allow users to continue to transact during shorter intermittent offline periods when the internet is temporarily unavailable. At the time of a transaction, the payee lays a claim to a portion of the payor's CBDC funds for clearing. The payer attests to this, thereby locking those funds from further spending by the payer. The actual transfer of funds or settlement occurs later when either the payer or the payee resumes connectivity with the online system. Since the online CBDC system records the final state of transactions and balances, settlement is deferred until internet connectivity resumes and the system updates. Certainly, we're going to see CBDCs coming down the line here. Also, interestingly enough, I just brought up biometrics and digital ID. U.S. Health Agency ponders digital identity as a service to manage crisis. One of the many U.S. agencies that should be encouraged in every way possible to make remote work easier and more secure, surely the National Institute of Health should be a top candidate. This is the full notice coming across here with digital ID aspects. National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine, Center for of Information Technology, or CIT. Proposed sources include web authentication, which would allow users to verify their identity, etc., etc. The NIH, the National Institute of Health, commonly referred to as NIH, the primary agency of the United States government responsible for biomedical and public health research. All right, moving forward here, the HBAR Foundation putting out a tweet. We're honored to announce the former acting comptroller of the currency, essentially the head regulator of all the banks in the United States, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and Coinbase Chief Legal Officer Brian Brooks has joined the board. Full article gets put out about this today. Brian Brooks, a fintech and global policy heavyweight, has joined the board of the HBAR Foundation, the organization helping drive adoption of the Hedera network. Brooks, who has substantial experience in financial policy, banking, digital assets, and Web3, brings with him a wealth of experience to his new board duties. The HBAR Foundation to date has allocated funding of more than $408 million, awarded over 225 grants, talks about Bitfury. All right, so this is the comment from Brian Brooks. Advancing responsible, widespread adoption of distributed ledger technology in Web3 is something I feel passionately about, and I'm thrilled to work with the talented teams across the HBAR Foundation to make this a reality. The HBAR Foundation, through a comprehensive grant program, has successfully grown awareness, accelerated access, and increased commerce in the HBAR economy by providing expert support across tech, marketing, and business development. Together, we will continue to be thought leaders and drive the industry forward to deliver on the vision of making Hedera the trust layer of the internet. Pretty massive announcement there, right? Okay, now this came across from the IMF. This is about a week old or so, but this is technology behind crypto can also improve payments, providing a public good. Again, we're seeing that narrative shift from all the legacy players, all the banks. If you look back a few years ago, it was certainly, crypto's a scam. If you look back, a year or two ago, it was, well, we're going to investigate proof of concepts. And if you look towards today, you're starting to see a narrative shift here. So crypto assets have been more of a disappointment than a revolution for many users, and global bodies like the International Monetary Fund and the Financial Stability Board urge tighter regulation. Some of the rapidly evolving tech behind crypto, however, may ultimately hold greater promise. The private sector keeps innovating and customizing financial services, but the public sector too should. Now, this is what's interesting here. Leverage technology to upgrade its payment infrastructure and ensure interoperability, safety, and efficiency in digital finance. As we noted in a recent working paper, a multi-currency exchange and contracting platform. Others too are advancing similar views. Technology has jumped ahead. It's talking about tokenization. It's talking about encryption and programmability, as well as private sector innovation. Talk about the paper that they reference here, which was back, I think this was 2022, November, a multi-currency exchange and contracting platform. You can read through the whole thing in here. I always find it interesting when you read into footnotes. So it's giving an example for Stellar and for Ripple here. And it's talking about solutions that leverage stablecoins for fast and inexpensive cross-border payments have also grown recently. And then it gives for example, Ripple and Stellar. But yeah, always paying attention to the narratives. This was also very interesting today. This is the Department of Homeland Security making an award for blockchain oil traceability. U.S. Department of Homeland Security has made a Phase 4 contract award of almost $200,000 to blockchain firm NeoFlow to digitally trace natural gas and crude oil transitioning from Canada to United States. The objective is to prevent fraud, so the solution uses verifiable credentials, decentralized identifiers, and distributed ledger technology to address this. Now, I do not believe that NeoFlow has a decentralized identity provider secure key. So again, you see DID, decentralized identity aspects, being talked about here. This is talking about DHS actually. Okay, so but NeoFlow here. This, if you're interested in NeoFlow, you can definitely check out more. This is Department of Homeland Security. Now, I didn't see anything regarding a coin or a token within this, but again, tying back into that kind of digital identity aspect or decentralized identity aspect, you can see it right here within key concepts of NeoFlow's documentation. Now, I translated this from Chinese. This is an investing.com Chinese article here, and I wanted to share, this is a forecast. This is number 3. The question marks are from the translation, obviously, but settlement, clearing, and decentralized ledger technology, DLT, settlement and clearing. By 2025, half of financial intermediaries will, I don't know what cloth-based ledger technology is. I think that's a that's definitely something with the translation. Half of financial intermediaries will use distributed ledger technology to support settlement and clearing functions. Half by 2025. Major financial intermediaries, including major United States clearinghouses, U.S. Depository Trust and Settlement Corporation, or DTCC, which deals in derivatives, have widely adopted, again we see subcloth here, distributed ledger technology. Allegedly, DTCC's related items processed about 10% of its bilateral equity transactions volumes in parallel. So that's the DLT, or the distributed ledger technology system through DTCC processing in parallel. And they have those parallel rails going. 10% of flows are running across the DLT aspect of what DTC is facilitating. So I just thought that was a major statistic. Half of financial intermediaries going to be using DLT by 2025. 2025 is not too far away. On the back end of this, we kind of still see Bank of England, and this is, I believe, John Cunliffe, DLT not efficient enough to power central bank digital currencies. And it's talking about transactions per second. Distributed ledger technology suffers with some real challenges on scalability, Cunliffe said, with any system needing to be secure and fast. On the retail side, now, again, you need to make a separation when you're looking at central bank digital currencies. There's retail and there's wholesale. Retail would be essentially, imagine if they use central bank digital currency for the aspects that we use, currently in the United States. So if you look at the automated clearinghouse system or the ACH system in the US, a lot of that's already digitized. So they're talking about scale within this, though. On the retail side, we put in 300,000 transactions per second as a base use case, going to or 30,000 transactions per second as a base case, going up to 100,000. I do not think that you can find any distributed ledger technology that gets remotely close to that. And then he goes on to say, I'm not saying that it cannot, but what a crypto firm or new payment firm has demonstrated within proof of concepts is a very different thing to scaling up to using economy-wide or cross-border. Even if payment innovations don't always stand up to central bank scrutiny, Cunliffe said that they could have other applications such as to mediate the sale and registration of real estate. And then again, we see John Cunliffe here, no tech skills to issue a CBDC yet, talking about not wanting to have two forms of Bank of England money circulating, much easier for small payments. So if you wanted to read an article in a newspaper, you wouldn't have to subscribe to that newspaper. You could pay tiny fractions as far as what a CBDC could potentially be utilized for, essentially micropayments, right? Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's pretty massive to hear from Brooks Entwistle from Ripple, with essentially multitudes more than 20 central banks being worked with. And then obviously the large highlight of the day outside of, well, the massiveness of this, 4.6 million total XRP wallet addresses is pretty huge. And then Brian Brooks, former head of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or, you could state it in the fact that he was obviously the Comptroller of the Currency, head banking regulator in the U.S. He's obviously not there anymore, but he's joined the HBAR Foundation's board. I think that's pretty massive as well and speaks for itself. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will talk to you when I talk to you. Bye.